So the beleaguered state power utility Eskom CEO André has cut short his notice period. He left the utility with immediate effect. Now, this after he made damning allegations against the governing party, the ANC, in a television interview. For more on this, I'm joined by Tebogo Khaas, who's a political commentator and trustee at Public Interest SA. Very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time. A lot of reaction to André leaving with immediate effect. Does it come as a surprise? What's your reaction?
Well, not so much of a surprise, but rather it's inelegant manner to actually leave a utility or to leave a job by anybody, especially as senior as André is. And given the circumstances within which Eskom finds itself, it was obviously only a month to go before he was expected to leave. That he was fired. Basically, he didn't leave. He was fired, owing to what his comments that had become very unsavory comments that were unbecoming of somebody of his stature.
Yeah. Now, poor governance and corruption are pervasive among SOEs. Why then would there be any doubt to the allegations André is making, considering the mountain of evidence which emerged already from the state capture report?
I don't think there's any doubt insofar as the allegations themselves are concerned. What is really unfortunate is the fact that André decided to go outside of the board or the organization itself to express those type of frustrations that he's had and genuine concerns in a manner that he did. From a governance perspective, it is rather not preferable or inelegant for a CEO or any executive in a company to go and make the kind of comments that André had made about the organization that he was still a part of. Mm-hmm. And we do understand the kind of pressure cooker environment that he finds himself in at Eskom, and the fact that it could also be frustrating if he had tried to approach the authorities and he, in his own assessment, realized that things were not moving in a manner that he would have preferred them to move. But that is the nature of the beast that South Africa is. And we have an incompetent criminal justice system, or in fact the police system, where a lot of cases go unreported, or if they are reported, there's a lot of bungling or ineptitude that sets in, as we've recently seen with the Newzroom matter now sitting in the Bloemfontein court.
Mm. So regardless of whether you like or hate André, at present, as you and I speak, Eskom is without a CEO and soon a COO, the same Eskom board which is in such a state of disaster. At the same time, Eskom's received this massive bailout just yesterday. Is this not a little too fortuitous for Eskom, for the Eskom board at all?
Look, in all honesty, in the past few months, Eskom has been on autopilot insofar as the role of the CEO was concerned. With André having announced his departure sometime in December, and with only a month to go, really his role was very limited in terms of there's not much that André could do in terms of changes or stopping load shedding or the kind of predicament that Eskom and the country finds himself in insofar as power generation and all that. We would only hope and wish that the board has moved fast to ensure that the replacement is found. And in the event that the replacement hasn't been found yet, at least somebody will be able to slot in an acting capacity. And within the board itself, we've got even the current chair of the board, who once acted while the Eskom was looking for a replacement CEO a couple of years ago. So it is nothing new in terms of Eskom being in flux insofar as the role of the CEO is concerned. As far as the chief operating officer, we know that role was going to be canned. So Mr. Oberholzer's departure wouldn't have triggered any need to replace him. So it is obviously not preferable to have a CEO leave in a manner that André has chosen to leave, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and with him forced to cut short his notice period, what do you think is next now for the beleaguered power utility, especially also looking at the dynamics at play, the introduction of a Minister of Electricity?
The introduction of the Minister of Electricity, I think the President finds himself in a very invidious position in the sense that we all know that Minister Gwede Mantashe, the Minister of Minerals and Energy, to whom Eskom has dotted line reporting line, has got a cloud over his head. And to the extent that we are now at a point where there is even talk about unbundling of Eskom and new initiatives, including the Just Energy Transition Program, it would be very difficult to justify why Eskom ought to be reporting or continue to report to a minister that is personally compromised from the integrity side. So the introduction of the Minister of Electricity, I think it is just a compromise which the President had found it very important to make, given the fact that we cannot trust Gwede Mantashe with Eskom, given what we know about him, let alone Busasa, but some of the poor judgment calls that he's made as Minister of Energy and Mineral Resources. So, indeed, there is not much that I believe that the new Minister of Energy would, or of Electricity would do. But to the extent that we need somebody with, or Eskom needs somebody who would have a way to get around the political minefield and the combustible environment that it finds itself operating. It might very well be that we've got somebody who all the political questions or political hot potatoes could be handled or resolved, because we have seen that André over time, he's morphed into what many people call a political hack or even a Trojan horse, unfortunately, as the likes of Gwede Mantashe has had to say, because he now started to dabble in the domain of politics, something that is unfortunate. So you needed in Eskom a minister or a ministry that would be able to soak in or serve as a buffer to deal decisively or to ward off any political pressure that Eskom found itself in. But to the extent that Mr. Ruyter himself has made pronouncements that were at times incongruent with government policy. For example, his disparaging remarks about coal not having a future and so forth, which went against government policy, and his perceived singular drive of renewables at the expense of fossil fuel power generation methods, alienated himself for the kind of people who would need, because Eskom currently needs both clean energy as well as the traditional fossil fuel generation capacity, because we've invested in the likes of Medupi and Kusile, who still have about 50-year plus lifespan. And there's no way we can just say that investment, we're just scrapping it off, is of no use anymore, including the legacy of the old coal-fired power stations. So I think he got out of his depth by actually delving into the political arena.
At the same time, a national state of disaster on the energy crisis has been declared, and this has happened before the regulations are even ready. In fact, in a response to a question posed by my colleague Stephen Ruyter yesterday to Minister in the Presidency, Mondli Gungubele, he said it's been gazetted but has to be issued, and that it was critical to just send a message. Is that response even sufficient?
Honestly, it's much ado about it. It's just musical chairs for me. I don't see why there was even a need to appoint or create that position of Minister of Electricity, but only the President would know better why he found it opportune or important for him to do that. But be that as it may, we have to accept that there will be a Minister of Energy. As to what it means, given our history with the national state of disaster for COVID, and now as it applies to energy, it might very well be that we hope that we're not going to find the kind of excesses or abuse of power as we've seen with regards to when it happened with the COVID national state of disaster that was proclaimed, where we've seen prohibition of sale of open-toe shoes, pajamas, even rotisserie chicken. I mean, my favorite. And we find that the absurdity of it all is some of the things that we hope would be avoided and averted. And what did you achieve? I do not know, because if you create a state of emergency, does that mean that, or of disaster, does that mean that you're going to suspend the procurement prescripts? No. Does that mean that you're going to fast track certain things? Maybe. But what is it that you cannot do today? Because even with the regard of PFM regulations, you can still do deviation from procurement prescripts if you are able to justify why you need to go this route, whether it's a single supplier method or the agency of the situation. So for me, it was an unnecessary panic button that the president pressed.
Yeah, very well. Thank you so much. Thanks for talking to us.